Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Phil, for that introduction. Didn't realize that was my middle name, but close enough. Just wanted to spend a few minutes, and as we said last year, welcome to Austin. It was a year ago this week, and at that point it was a warm and balmy, I think about 92 degrees in Austin. But for those of you that were here, and for those of you that are here today, you don't know what a big part of history you have been involved in. So number one, Texas is closed today because of the cold. We really don't know how to operate in this type of weather. And if you've seen the news today, you've seen the massive flooding that's going on a little bit west of us. But on Sunday, the temperature in Austin was about 90 degrees. I got off a plane Sunday night at 11 p.m. and the temperature said a little bit over 80. It dropped to 55 overnight by yesterday morning that you're well aware of. With the wind chill factor that you have experienced in the greater Austin area, we were approaching what I consider to be Minneapolis weather in July. But in typical Texas fashion, you really can't compete. And so here we are. And back to the reason that we're here today. A year ago, as I said, we introduced FutureSource. What we want to do here tonight or this afternoon is give you a bit of an update on the progress that we've made. We understand, as any new year-old child or year-old product, there are pros, there are issues, there are challenges. We've had a conversation earlier today where we talked about some of the issues, some of the needs that you from the service provider community have brought to us. We ask that you continue to do that. But when we started this a year ago, when we announced it, our objective was to provide a new, more collaborative way for clients and providers to work together to develop a sustained business relationship. As you heard Esteban and Dave talk yesterday, you've heard others today. I know it's been a topic of discussion in all of my one-on-ones. We've moved really away from using the ending phrase there, a sustainable contract. ISG believes that in order for our industry to be successful going forward, we have to help clients and you as service providers establish that sustained business relationship in order to move forward. And we are here to help to the extent possible. We wanted to increase the number of providers for our clients. We're hearing this continually. Bring me, there was a phrase used earlier today, bring me those new tier, bring me those providers that are able to advance our industry, deal with our requirements. Many of you here have those capabilities as well, and you are developing and bringing those along. So we want to increase the options that our clients have to consider putting that sustained business relationship in place with. We also talked about how we would be continually evolving those sets of standards, tools, methodologies, and approaches that we use to help clients working with you to move forward with that. We believe that we've accomplished that throughout this year. As we consider the market, in which we're all involved, other drivers behind our move into the FutureSource approach are these that you see listed here this afternoon. As we heard yesterday again, as a service continues to grow. I think it was Dave that used the phrase, the legacy outsourcing contract of years past is done. It's moving to an as-a-service model rather than the major single lift and shift set of services. The cloud is really an enabler of our path forward. Everything is there, everything will be there. How we get it there, how you help clients get it there, how we help orchestrate or architect what that ultimate end solution is part part of the value that we, through FutureSource, assist our clients to consider, to evaluate, and to work with you to implement. Automation, as we know, is everywhere we turn. Emerging technologies, blockchain that Alex and Jan-Erik just talked about, other things other topics that you've had in breakout sessions, discussions that you've had with our industry leaders, discussions amongst yourselves in the breakouts. The emerging technologies are going to drive us to, again, move faster, continually faster, take on more, improve our efficiency and effectiveness of operations, deal with our people and processes, not only in ISG, but also in our clients as well. The evolution of the network. I think having spent a number of years living and working in Silicon Valley, I go back to a phrase that was said in about 1991, 1992 that I've often wanted to use, and I think now is probably the appropriate time. But Scott McNeely, if any of you knew him from Sun Microsystems, had a phrase, and his phrase was, "The network is the computer." And I knew Scott, and I think this is now coming to the point where it's the connectivity of all of the intelligence through systems, through automation, through capabilities and advancements there that are bringing it together. We're seeing it evolve and advance as fast as I'm sure you are. And on-demand everything. Again, one of the topics we talked about last year, it has continued to increase every place you turn, from Uber Eats to your boarding passes to being able to pre-reserve parking spaces at Austin Airport. On-demand everything that you do continues to increase and hopefully provides value to our lives. The ISG FutureSource promise that we talked about last year and we've continued to deliver this year, and we hope that you are in agreement with, but that we ask that you continue to provide us feedback on. We wanted to bring more experience to the table, more experience from an ISG perspective, more experience from provider perspective to put in front of clients, to bring more experience from our database, our knowledge, our industry presence around the world into an approach that made sense to clients and providers to accelerate their adoption and implementation of that sustainable business model between parties. More agility. Transactions that are structured to facilitate the way that you do business. We know, again, that the industry has changed and clients want to do business differently. Transactions that are structured to facilitate that and expedite that for you. Whether it's via an RFP, whether it's through an RFS, whether it's through RFX1, there are a number of different ways to structure those tenets that you ultimately have to have in place to build that business relationship. And a reduced time to contract. Talk a little bit about it here, but more on a few slides later. As we go forward throughout this year, you will see ISG come or bring you into an engagement where what we're doing is really asking you to participate in a co-design or co-solutioning type arrangement. This is ahead of the release of any formal documents, ahead of an RFS, ahead of an RFP. It's where we want to bring you in, sit down as tripartite or some other configuration with clients and understand really what their outcomes are, what their objectives are. Build that solution. And then at the end, come up with what I am calling a minimal viable contract. So move away from those heavy, burdensome agreements and structures to something that is just enough to protect you and to protect the client. I think that falls into more of the innovation category. The deeper collaboration through the collaboration and alignment sessions that we'll talk on in a few slides, solutions creations, more creativity, bringing you in, giving you more insight and input, and asking you for more guidance on how really those solutions should be developed. Innovative governance. There has to be better ways for clients and providers to govern the solutions and the operations that they enter into together. It needs to move away from one side dictating to the other and operating in a master-slave type relationship if I use another technology term. There has to be innovative forms of governance to move into together so that you're both focused on the success of the client and their outcomes, but it's a benefit to you as well. And more value. Through the ISG FutureSource process, the accelerated timelines, the more focused on solutions, reducing, moving to that minimal viable contract, help you to maximize or decrease your B&P budget. Be able to get the clients to make decisions sooner so that you're not kept along in processes, you've not invested more than you should have, that you can then move to address other clients if you're not successful moving forward, or that you can move to a contract signing sooner and work beginning sooner. We believe that we've delivered this through a number of different mechanisms. The highly collaborative process. To date, we've leveraged the standard or agile methodologies. We believe that they accelerate both the client and the provider's ability to form that business relationship and to achieve those objectives and outcomes. We've conducted training and education of our internal ISG teams, clients, and service providers. Not everyone has been trained. Not everyone within ISG is fully trained. Not everyone within your teams have been trained. Teams come on and off of engagements, just like yours, and as those rotate in and out, they will be trained and brought up to speed so that when you encounter them on ISG engagements, you can feel confident that they will understand the ISG FutureSource methodologies, and we will work alongside with you to train your teams where needed. We have a continuous improvement process, as we talked about earlier, for the refinement of the methods, the processes, and the teams. Again, we ask for your continued input in that. The methodologies that we use today are unlike those in the past, where they are not a standard set that are issued via an update once a year or whenever is appropriate. We have a living set of documents that are under continual update. Moving from one engagement to the next, you will see differences in the tools, the processes, the methodologies, and the approaches. It's part of the agile environment in that we have to continue to evolve in order to survive. A few statistics for you. Thus far in calendar year 2018, for the CPQ, or the Candidate Provider Qualification process, we have delivered these on 50 unique clients, meaning 50 unique companies, over 72 unique engagements, and these are global numbers. We've delivered 1,338 as of Monday morning, individual provider profiles to engagement teams and clients. All of that information is based upon the information that you have provided and submitted into our data repository. What we have is what you've delivered to us. And we've presented or queried 163 different service combinations. A service combination would be, for example, data center services is one, application development is a second. Take all of those different permutations, and 163 different of those since January 1st of this year around the world. We've learned a lot about the CPQ process. I hope you have as well. In our discussions with our clients, here's really what we've learned, what clients are interested in. They want to know who can do the work. Our answer to them is based upon our data in the CPQ system. It is a combination of the insights, the provider landscape document, all of the other data that has been collected from you via the phone interviews with our research teams, any other publicly available press releases, announcements, meetings, presentations that you've had with ISG, or information that is readily available. And then any information that would be publicly or be considered not divulging of proprietary information coming out of engagements. If we learn something about you that we believe would be of benefit to other clients, then we include that in the repository. So the clients want to know who can do that work. They want to know your experience levels. Where have they done it? Most clients, and I think we had this conversation earlier in a different session, don't necessarily want to be guinea pigs. Esteban, I believe, talked about innovation this morning. Clients do want you to have innovative ideas, but they don't necessarily want to be on the bleeding edge of what you're bringing as a service to market. They want to understand where you have done this or something very similar to it before. Quality, how well have you performed? They want to talk to your references. They want to go see it. All of this type of information we include into a CPQ, absent your other client names, but where they could potentially go and see this information or who they could talk to, meaning what positions in other organizations related to a vertical or industry. And then more and more our clients are asking us for specific ISG insight. Historically in the past, ISG provided information, collected information, distilled it maybe some, and provided it to a client and said, here it is, you decide. And a client would do that. But more and more, given the fast pace of the industry, the speed at which they want to move, and the major decisions that they're making that affect their business, clients are asking ISG for a direct opinion. We're providing that. And again, I tie it back to our teams, our directors in the field, our partners, everyone from an ISG perspective who interacts and faces off with clients needs to know about you. Our first step of educating our advisors in a consistent manner is based upon the data and information that you have provided. Just some statistics for you. And again, these are the CPQ results since January 1st of this year, 2018. It is providing deeper engagement with the provider community in our clients. As you know, as we begin a process with a client, once we understand enough, we think, to describe where the client is headed and what they may be wanting to consider to engage with the market in, we start that CPQ process. We want to start it sooner rather than later to be able to collect that data, provide our clients with optimal decision making, and if we need additional information from you, give us ample time to get to you and provide you with ample time to respond so that you're not indirectly eliminated from the process. But when those CPQs are submitted, when that process is submitted into our research team, the highest number of providers that has been returned back to the team so far this year for a single engagement was 53. There's going to be a lot of work that has to be done by our engagement team and the client to start to reduce that. The highest number of providers that went on a primary list, meaning the list that the client actually wanted to start to bring in to go through CAS sessions to have more in-depth discussions with, was 33. That's going to be a large process. The highest number of providers in a short list was 25. Those are the number of providers that have gone through the initial sessions and the client has determined, I really want to understand more, so I want to release the formal documents and a request for those providers to engage in that market search activities. To the right are just the averages. If I look across all of the CPQs and transactions year to date, on average there's 16 providers that make the long list, and there's an average of 5 providers. Well, this number on the right is very interesting. On average, each engagement, there are 5 providers introduced, or there have been 5 providers introduced to clients who would have never been considered before. Let that one sink in for a minute. A little bit of information here on the CAS process. And these slides are a little bit of an eye chart. You can look at it. What these are It's a standardized set of questions when we go through the different CAS sessions, a standardized set of questions that we ask each client at the culmination of each CAS session. Those answers are recorded. We can match client team member, client, service provider, and that gets recorded in our database. We will use this going forward in order to assess providers with these types of clients in this industry. We can slice and dice and look at the data in a number of ways. On the slide on the left, you see a diamond above each one of the bars. That's a pre-established importance level that's established by the client prior to taking the surveys at the end of each session. As I said, the client type, scope, objectives, provider, all of that aggregates into our system, gets fed into the ISG provider landscape, and also helps inform the ISG opinion that we're being asked for more and more that I talked about on the previous slide. What you're going to see on the next 4 slides, and you have to watch closely at the top where it says provider 1 rating, that'll change across the 4 providers, are examples of the type of output that we are providing to our clients at the end of every CAS session. The results are from each of the 4 sessions with the providers. The CAS provider scan conducted at the onset of any engagement sets the tone for the rest of the engagement, and you can be one and done if you don't accurately prepare for the CAS PS. The message here for you is to send a very well prepared team that has a breadth of service knowledge and experience that you can interact with and communicate with the client. They need to know each other. You would be surprised how many times we show up at an engagement, start a CAS session, and the provider team walks in front of the client and they start introducing themselves to each other. That immediately sends a signal to the client that this isn't a cohesive team, and I'm really not sure what the answer is that I'm going to get if I ask 2 of them in a row. And you need to be able to deal with the forensic type questionings. One of the learnings coming out of the CAS sessions is with the extended period that we're having you interact with the clients and the level of detail that they are willing to get to grows more and more. And especially as you go through the different CAS sessions, the clients become more inquisitive, they become more focused on the details, they know the personalities of the players in the room, and they're doing much deeper dives into the solution and your offerings. Just a couple of quotes for you. These are from clients when we survey at the end of every CAS session on what they thought were the benefits. So the CAS process helps them discover, helps them to understand really who you are, what you can do, your quality of service, and where you've done it before. Those questions that were back on the previous slide. And it really helps us to understand the provider capabilities on an accelerated basis. Because of that extended time, because of the depth at which the clients will go into the questions, it's an advantage to you if you're successful in that, because when you exit, the client and you have a much better understanding of each other. Here's a few examples we also survey providers at the end of what you, and maybe 1 or 2 of you have written some of these in here. But the process helped the provider to engage and understand the client situation. In the old way that it was done, you were just relying on the exchange of information, whatever came in over email and in limited interaction sessions. These really help you achieve that deeper level of understanding. You liked getting the real-time feedback. This will lead to a much better response on your part. And the CAS PS forum gave us the opportunity to convey the commitment and the dedication to the clients, and the clients appreciate that. Moving on to a different topic, we also run, during a client engagement, 2 studies. We call them perception studies. One is conducted at the beginning. It's focused on governance to help the client understand what it's going to take to operate in that future model, what changes they will have to impact or implement inside their organization. And then transition helps them understand really how is that going to happen? Who's going to be responsible for what? How is that work going to get done? What changes in the organization? What impacts on the culture? One of the other areas we're currently trying to address with ISG FutureSource is this concept of governance. When services, relationships are neither happy or unhappy, the cause is typically equal, shared between the client and the provider. We know that. You heard Esteban and Dave touch on this topic yesterday. Client satisfaction with the incumbent service provider is challenging. We understand the issues, but also know that only you can address that during the transformation in steady state. Most times, ISG is not around at that point. Where we see failure to continue, meaning taking the services to market, is typically due to margin protection by your organization, the team composition that was talked about earlier today of the changing of the teams and the downgrading of the teams, or a failure to innovate, which Esteban talked on earlier as well. This is not an academic problem. You've heard Todd Lavieri talk. You've heard others talk over the years past. Between the two of these numbers, 79% of that 66% of renewals that are competitive are going to market. ISG's view is if you're an incumbent supplier and the scope of your services go to market, you have a less chance than this of being able to retain that. Coactive governance, we started to talk a little bit earlier about it. Being incorporated continually and more into FutureSource is the foundation for effective enterprise agility and digital services. You heard Ola talk about this earlier today and even yesterday during the panel section. Coactive governance means working together to advance, build, grow, and enhance to meet our clients' goals and objectives, the outcomes. Yesterday, we heard about the rapid, incessant move to deliver the agile enterprise and digital capabilities. If you're not working together with your clients in that active governance mode, it won't work. This is an election year. Think of this as an analogy. The day after you start, you've won a deal. The day after you start to deliver is the day you should start running for renewal. You have to continually put innovative ideas, challenging ideas, new services, expanded services in front of the client. Otherwise, you get to the CAS session during the renewal, and the CIO looks across the room and says, "Why am I only hearing about all these capabilities that you can do? You've been here 3 years. Where have you been?" So what's next? Increasing adoption of FutureSource. We're going to incorporate blockchain. We'll move on to another slide and talk about OCM and project management. And we're continuing to incorporate into the processes and services that we provide to our clients and an expansion of their ability to make those right decisions. As I said earlier, we've delivered ISG FutureSource across the Americas, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, even into South America. All of your teams have not experienced FutureSource, as I mentioned earlier. Ours have received training. Some will receive additional just-in-time as they go into new engagements, depending upon the model. Your training is currently underway. If you would like additional training, let me know, or let Phil know. Stay tuned as more clients, countries, and engagements come online. Alex talked about blockchain. This will be incorporated under the ISG FutureSource methodology. I talked a little bit earlier about the co-design, co-solution approach. We believe that that is best for blockchain. You can't run this really through a 13-week process or a 26-week process. It's going to take interaction, collaboration, understanding the outcomes expected, understanding the business processes, the tools, the data, the systems, the people. That will be incorporated under there, under ISG FutureSource. Probably the biggest change that you'll see this year within FutureSource is the combination of our OCM and transaction capabilities. Corporate behavioral change is mandatory, as you know, in order for client success. We're bringing together two of our leading services. We're integrating these into the transaction methodology to help ensure client success. When you really study these services, they're very complementary. OCM must understand the intricacies of the solution, and the transition teams must understand the needs and challenges to change the behavioral modes of our clients. Without this togetherness, organizations typically continue to operate in the old mode and not the one needed to achieve the target operating model. As we discussed yesterday, the old world of outsourcing is gone. Clients expect something new, something different, something effective, something efficient, and something collaborative. We believe in ISG FutureSource. It's delivering the exponential improvements in the sourcing and relationship process that we have expected. We have received very positive feedback from, I think, all of you here in the room. There may be one or two holdouts, but I think it's all fairly positive. We believe it has dramatically increased provider visibility into the tendering process. On average, as I said earlier, 5 new providers being introduced to clients, more opportunities for you to get in front of clients, for them to understand your capabilities. We're driving collaboration, relationship building, and identification of readiness is making a difference. And we want to see you win. We want new relationships to be established. We want you to renew existing relationships. And we want our clients, as I think you do, to have a deep understanding of your capabilities, culture, capacity prior to entering into that business relationship. I think we have about 7 minutes left. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any, if I can see you through the lights.
Front. I probably don't
Hack. No, you don't, but.
Thanks. So when a provider has gained a new referenceable customer or added capabilities and can prove it, how do they refresh what ISG knows about them?
So there's a pretty well-defined process to update data in CPQ. Work with the research team. Jan-Erik was up here. Get in contact with him. Esteban made mention of a more user-friendly tool, if you want to call it that, to submit updates to data and information. Follow that process. Get it submitted. If you have key individuals in the organization that you reach out to, go ahead and do that. Let them know you've had a major win, or you're introducing a major new service, you're moving into a new geography. Let us know, but do follow the process to get that data in there. Because like I said earlier, our first attempt to start to answer that question with the client on who are the providers that can do this is to go back to the CPQ database, pull all the information we know of you or know about you. If your new data is not in there, we can't get to that.
Well, just to add a couple things, right? If you're working with my guys on the sales and service team in research, advisor awareness is one of the key things that we do. For those of you that are Momentum clients, you're able to leverage the flexibility of that menu-based solution to improve your advisor awareness capabilities.
Yep.
And we spend a lot of time asking that, and we work very closely with Jan-Erik. Most of you are pretty good in operating inside that provider lens research deliverable. There are occasionally firms that get caught up in other priorities and may miss out on that, but we're pretty flexible in how we work with you to try to advance those two things. So, Hack, great question. Thank you. Anybody else in the back?
Clay, can you talk a little bit more about this minimum viable contract? I'm curious because particularly some of these new digital deals may be much smaller than our traditional large-scale outsourcing deals.
Right.
And no one wants to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on advisory for a handful of millions of dollars. So what's our approach there?
So our approach is, number one, we believe we have to go into it through this co-design, co-solutioning approach where we start with the client to understand what the outcomes are that they expect. Then with the providers, and again, the provider is brought in very early. This is almost at the very beginning. Give us a week or so to get on the ground and figure out the logistics. But engage you, the providers, early on to help solution, design, understand what the client is really asking for. Then go through and really accomplish the design of what the client is expecting before we even start to talk about things from a contractual standpoint. And then right at the end, only document enough in the contract that the parties, the client, service provider, ISG, believe are needed to protect the two of you. And then go to whatever the legal process is for the client and you as a provider, go through that process to do it. It's much lighter, it's much shorter, it's definitely focused on outcomes. It really goes back to, it's speaking to the what that the client needs, not the details of the how, because at that point, the client and the provider have been able to achieve and understand what the goals and objectives and outcomes are and the price that's going to be delivered. It's still in an incubator mode, right? I've had conversations with a number of you just today about it. We're looking for potential opportunities. We have a few in mind, I think a couple of you do, of clients where we could go in and work together in order to prove this out in an agile approach of how we can work together in that co-design, co-solution type configuration.
Great. Dave, great question. Thank you. Anybody else? We've got time for a couple more. You covered it all.
All right.
Clay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well done.